Talk to me. What's up, Chris?
Hi, how are you?
There you are. All right, cool. I'm good. I'm good. Does it sound okay? I'm just I'm just going through my regular speaker here and mic. Is that cool?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Okay, cool. The other option was to be in the studio, then it would sound great, but it would be dark and boring.
Okay. Thanks for willing to do this.
Yeah, no, thanks for sticking with me. Like I said, I don't love doing interviews, and so I don't do them too often. But like I said, if you keep bugging me at some point, I mean, unless you harass, which you did not, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Eventually, I'll come around and be like, yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. So I could just jump around then with roles in your career and everything.
Yeah, jump around however you want. Have at least some new question in there, though. Give me something that I don't expect.
Okay.
Somewhere mixed in there. It doesn't even have to be voiceover related, just to keep it spicy, so it's not all the same stuff.
Well, the first thing I can ask is, do you have a special story of how you got into SAG?
Oh, how I got into SAG. The gig that got me into SAG, I had done a whole bunch of non-union. Well, I don't know a whole bunch, but my career had consisted at that point. It was very early on. I don't know even what year. Somewhere around 2000, I guess, 2002, maybe 2001. It mostly non-union stuff, obviously. And then I did something called it was a Christmas special. Hold on, Nine Dog Christmas, and I played one of the dogs in that, and then a few other characters. A dog, a reindeer, lots of animals and such. And it was a non-union production, but then they got, I guess, James Earl Jones, I think, to do, or somebody to do, or that's what they told us at least, to do some narration in it. And they were like, "It's all going union. Either join union or we'll replace you," they said. Which was funny because we all wanted to go union. So it was like, we didn't need the threat. We just were like, cool, we'll go union. So that was the gig that got me over into the union. And what a gig.
Yeah.
Classic. Everybody remembers it. You know you do.
And would that have been like a few years before you got into doing anime?
I'm trying to place that with whether I was doing anime or not at that point. I think it was before I really got into anime. I had done some industrial gigs in the beginning, and then my first, like what I call real gig, was Thomas Timberwolf, which was an internet show through Warner Brothers, and it was Chuck Jones. It ended up being Chuck Jones' final original production based on characters he had created, long time ago, and they finally came to fruition. And then, yeah, odds and ends. I don't even think I was doing anime at that point, because when I started doing anime, that's it. My career started to pick up in terms of quantity of work. Once I established myself at a couple of different studios, that seemed to be the in that really propelled me to get more work and to be able to not have to wait tables anymore. Which was a good thing.
Yeah, it was Kirk Thornton that got you into it.
Somebody's done their research. You're right. So I will tell you right off the bat, your first bit of research is correct. Yeah, he got me into at Bang Zoom, which is where I think my first one was. Yeah, I can't think of anything before that. I worked with him on a show called Edgar and Ellen that was based on a book series, for a children's book series, and they were dubbing some of that. And the funny thing is, I worked with. It was a rare instance we did dubbing for this, and there were maybe 6 or 7 different actors there, male, female. I cannot remember who they were. I didn't know anybody at that point. I remember Kirk just because he was the one I was speaking with, and he said, "Get me your info, please." And I got him which was probably a cassette back in the day. My demo cassette, maybe demo CD. I'm sure I had both of them. And that's when I ended up working with Bang Zoom on the first anime that I did, and then more afterwards, which is really cool. So Kirk, I remember, and I'm sure I now know everybody that I was working with, but I just don't remember who they were. There were no photos for me to go, "Oh my God, that's who I worked with." I should look it up. That's what I'll do at some point.
Well, I would think it would be one of the first things you ever did. One of my favorite roles of yours is actually Zwei in Phantom. You remember that at all?
Yeah, you're going way back. I love that. That was just called Phantom, is that correct?
Yeah.
I have it here somewhere. That was I believe that's my first lead.
Yep.
That's the lead character, right? So I think that's my first lead. And what's interesting about that, I was obviously much younger, but that was through Bang Zoom also. And Bang Zoom had me in a very interesting pocket when I first started doing anime. I was playing a lot of really young, higher pitched characters. And so I was, auditioning against like Johnny Young Bosch and, probably Bryce Papenbrook, like people who just never lost that younger, higher thing. And that even back then, I think they were definitely better at that than me. But at least I could compete and every once in a while get the role at, however many years ago that was, 23 years ago, 24 years ago, probably about 20 years ago.
Do you remember, I know you played multiple characters in Mare as well.
Yes. Yeah. That was through the PCB did that one. That one, I really liked Mare. Mare was, I remember one of the ones I was having the most fun, like early on working on. I was really proud at the time of my work on. I liked Giram especially.
Yep.
He was really fun. I'm trying to remember who else I played in. It was Giram,
Roland, and Boss.
Yeah, and Roland was more soft, had more of a soft tone to him. And then Boss was an older. I was probably deepening my voice at the time to sound 30, 35, which is funny because now I just now, I want me 30. All right, I have to raise it up a bit to get to that 30 zone. I loved that, and I remember it was airing, and it started coming out on DVD, and I was buying the DVDs, and they stopped after. I mean, I don't even know. They made maybe 3 or 4 DVDs. I think there was 1 box set or something, and then they stopped. It was on Toonami for a while, if that was even called Toonami at that point.
Yep.
And so I saw most of them through that, but I remember being really hyped about, like, it was on somewhere where people could see it.
It does sound like, from what I've heard before as well, that you're also a fan of anime outside of working on it.
Oh yeah, I mean, since I was a kid, I didn't know what it was, but back in the day, I used to, tune the TV to try to find all kinds of crazy, weird channels, and just kind of, you could search on your TV basically for all those youngsters out there and try to tune in different channels. And I found lots of stuff. I think the show that Power Rangers was based on was a show I used to watch, not anime, it was live action. I used to watch Giant Robot and Ultraman. And then anime-wise, I used to watch Kimba the White Lion. There's a show called Marine Boy, which was the same dubbed cast as Speed Racer, which I loved. And I also loved Speed Racer. Battle of the Planets. A little bit later, there was, I don't think it was Transor Z yet, but there was a Shogun Warriors show that I used to watch also as a kid. Anything anime just really drew me in. Like I said, I didn't know what it was, but it had a different vibe. It had the coolest drawn explosions ever. Like as a kid, I was just like, whoa, every time anything would blow up. I loved it. And it had giant monsters and robots and mechs and just things that weren't available on Scooby-Doo. So I was drawn to that as opposed. I still loved, US animation and cartoons too, but there was something about anime. I didn't know what it was. I could never get enough of it as a kid. So I loved it.
And do you think, in terms of when you work on it, do you think that you have a preference on more dramatic projects opposed to comedy, or no?
No, I don't know that I have a preference. I think when I first started doing anime, there were times where I thought, like, this show is going to be amazing because it's got demons and, there's these really cool creatures, and that's going to be the show that I'm going to love working on. And then this one that's about relationships and love, that's going to be boring, but I'm going to work on it. I remember thinking that. And specifically, I worked on 2 shows at the same time. Let's see if I can remember them. Oh, I just had it in my head. One was Honey and Clover.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one, what was the other one called? Is Buso Rankin? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think it was those 2 shows, and I thought Buso Rankin was going to be the one I was going to dig. And when they came out and I watched them, I very much more preferred Honey and Clover. No disrespect to Buso Rankin. Just I learned, like, a show is going to be cool or not for a lot more reasons than whether just the subject matter on its head, is cool to me. So the relationship stuff was much more interesting, and that pulled me in far more than the demons or whatever they had in Buso Rankin. So in that particular instance, so I'll work on whatever, if it's a cool show, it's a cool show. In the end, it's really fun if you work on something that ends up being popular, that people are into. But you don't always know that going in sometimes.
Well, what do you think I'm sure there's been a lot of them, but what do you think the darkest headspace you've had to go for anime is?
You've done your research, you should know. It's got to be Monster.
Yeah.
Playing Johan in Monster. That was, I think still that's the only show really to date that I had to kind of stay, not in character, but not goof around between takes and just kind of just be chill, because it felt like cheating to like be in that space, give a line or two, and then make a little joke and come back up here and whatever, and then okay, next line, and then to like get back there. I could do the voice, so I could get vocally to the place, but I didn't feel like internally it was too hard to just go whoop whoop whoop. Does that make sense? Like, he was just dark, and I wanted him to live in that dark place while I was doing the character. So I think that's the darkest one I've had to do, especially prolonged. Meaning there may have been a scene I did that was particularly sad or dark or whatever in something else, but it was just one scene as opposed to the entirety of the content with Johan is dark,
Well, I know it's dark in a different context, but I would think if you had to do that at all for Blade of the Immortal.
Yeah. I don't know if I felt like, I know what you mean. Like a lot of the plot is, dark. He's trying to redeem himself. I think it would have got darker if it had gone on for longer. That was not my first lead, but I remember really being excited about that. That's the style of character I think I enjoy the most. I definitely did at that time, like a kind of a dark, reluctant hero, because he's not really a hero. He's someone that, if I remember correctly, he had done so much wrong in his life and killed so many, right, that in order to redeem himself and finally move on to the afterworld, he had to do a certain amount of, good deeds, basically. But he was a darker character, to be sure. So that reluctant hero character has always been a type of character I've gravitated towards. I love that. He was a lot of fun, and I had no idea it would be so short. It just kind of ended one day in a session, and it was like, that's your last line. I was like, oh, for the season? Like, no, that's it. But there's no resolution, nothing even, I know, but that's what we have.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, well, okay. Well, I guess it was fun while it lasted, but it would have been nice. It's a good series. I'm sure it would have been cool if it had gone further, even if they do more with someone else in the future. It seemed like I never read the manga or anything, but hopefully there's more there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is also, at least in my opinion, there's a lot of grounded, nuanced stuff in their characters in K, Missing Kings, and also Violet Evergarden.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those are great. Both not the nicest of characters in either of those. I seem to play a good amount of some level of jerks, villains or self-centered, bastards, what have you. Those are both fun to work on, and I don't think either of them. I don't think I expected either of them to do as well as they did, and that doesn't mean that I didn't think what I was working on was quality. Just when you work for an extended period of time, 20 years or whatever, you generally, most things don't blow up or get particularly popular. Just most of them don't, whatever it is, 90%, 80% of them. So when you work on something, when you first start, you're like, this is going to be huge. This is going to be so huge. And then you realize, oh, it's not. It's very rare that something just like totally blows up. And those haven't blown up, but they came out, they simmered. And then years and years later, people are still like, more and more people are like, I love that. This is great. I love this movie. I love this series. And it's fun to watch the interest grow in a series that has been out for some time now. It's just a cool thing.
Well, I don't know if it's one that people really ever talk about to you anymore, but I think the first thing that instilled your voice in my head was Kakaishi.
In which one?
Kakaishi.
Kakaishi. That sounds super familiar, and I can't even remember it right now. Which one that is?
You played a villain that could turn into a horse.
This is one I probably recorded and never saw. I think it sounds familiar what you're saying right now. I think we did. I think that was like a Studiopolis thing. I think
it was like 2007. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That may be. Was that decent?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, cool. All right. It's really tough to keep up with everything. So whether I'm a fan of anime or not, there's a certain amount of, as a kid, I had a certain amount of time, which was all the time that I wasn't doing schoolwork to watch anime and be into it. And it's funny, between work and conventions and being a dad and normal stuff around the house or whatever you got to do and taking time off, I definitely watch a much smaller percentage of even the stuff that I work on, let alone other series sometimes. But I got to watch all my Marvel stuff too. I'm a big Marvel fan, so it's hard to, you know what I mean? There are a lot of shows I've worked on that I've seen bits of only or none of. I mean, you'd be surprised how many of those there are.
Well, in terms of your bigger or like more popular characters that you have gotten to spend more time with, who do you think that you personally relate the most to?
Who do I personally relate to? I'm trying to think of who I mean, maybe Torbjorn, I guess. It's not anime, obviously, but from Overwatch. Just because he's clearly a dad and somewhat of a leader. He feels like, I mean, I relate to that. He feels like in some ways in his past he had made mistakes, and now he wants to do better. And I can relate to that. So if you're talking about personally relating to, I can personally relate to a good chunk of who he is and what drives him. There's other relationships I have with the characters. I mean, this is the complicated thing. People always want to know, like, who's your favorite? I liked how you worded that question because it was a little different. But it's hard to have a favorite because there's so many different ways to relate. When I'm recording, there's your first expectation. Ooh, this is a cool character. He's going to be awesome. I can't wait to do this, right? There's the reality of recording with that character. Is it fun? Is there a lot of growth? Is there a lot of challenge involved in doing it? So what is that process like? And then there's, how did it turn out? If you're watching it, like, are you happy with it? Does that character now, do you feel a different way about that character now that you're seeing it all done and happening and interacting with all the other characters within the storyline? And then the final segment would be, how does the audience react? How does the world react to it? And that's a really, really important part of it. And it's the last part. It's the last thing chronologically that happens. And if you love it and you come to me at a con and you say, I love this character, or you're just, on Reddit saying, this is amazing, I love this character, that affects me. And then characters, some of which I already loved, some of which I liked, some of which I'd forgotten about, become more important to me because of the amount of love. I mean, you don't understand when people pour out and they're like, this game or this show changed my life. I met my spouse because of this, and we play every night, and or this thing got me through a real dark time in my life. And we hear so many of these stories that you can't help but have a new level of appreciation for certain characters, even if you already love them. Or, contrary, even if you had forgotten about that character, it becomes, prevalent. It becomes important because you're like, this is important to a lot of people. So now it is important to me. So it's really, we have interesting relationships with our characters, I would say. I do, at least.
Is there anything with Zhongli that you can relate to?
Yeah, I like his he's got this great sense of like storytelling and experience. I don't think I'm a particularly great storyteller, to be honest. I don't mean like you give me a script, I can't fulfill that role. But you meet people, you hang out with at parties and stuff or wherever you're at, and they're just great at telling stories. That's not me. It's because I don't really have the stories. I have a more difficult time recollecting stories than some people do. Some people like wear them on their sleeve and they're just like, oh yeah, what do you need? I got this. I remember this in full detail. How about this? And I don't seem to have that ability. So I respect that he's got that. And the main thing with Zhongli is, again, when a character in a game blow up and it just become #1 game in the world, I mean, that's crazy. And that, I don't know that it is now, but it was for an incredible amount of time, like at least a year, which is insane. So when you're talking about that, the reaction I get from everybody makes that character so important to me. I mean, it's incredible how many people know me as, #1 as Zhongli. and it's one of my more recent roles. So so I have a lot of respect and love for that character simply because it seemed to have been the right mesh with my voice. For whatever reason, it just hit, and that's not just me. That's all the things, the character design, of course, the gameplay, like everything came together at the right time. And that's an important thing, because you only get those kind of like lightning in a bottle things. If you get them once in your career, I think you're really lucky, depending on how long your career is. But to get those, I'm very thankful when that happens. So.
Well, and speaking of legacy series, were you a fan of Sailor Moon at all before being cast?
Yeah. Well, Sailor Moon, I didn't watch myself, but my stepkids were into, my stepdaughter particularly was into, years ago, was into Sailor Moon. Now, I knew what Sailor Moon was. I used to go to cons when I was a kid, just local conventions. And Sailor Moon was kind of synonymous with anime.
Yeah.
Meaning it was one of the main ones. If anybody had anything anime, they had Sailor Moon stuff at a certain time. That was big, maybe even bigger than, more common than Dragon Ball Z, but at least comparable. Now, obviously, Dragon Ball Z is way bigger, but I just mean at the time you say anime, people would go like Sailor Moon. Like that was kind of one of the first things people would say. So I knew what it was. So to be able to work on it was very iconic. Interestingly enough, when I worked on Sailor Moon, one of the characters I played was Professor Tomoe.
Yep.
One of the Guardians' dads. And after I played it a few times, I had this weird like memory flash, and I thought, I think I have a doll. I think I have a figure for the character I ended up voicing in my cellar. And I basically went down to my cellar and where I've got this guy here. Let me see if you can see him. He's right here. So I had this guy in my cellar. I have everything except for the glasses. But I love this because I had this for a decade or more before I actually played this character.
Wow. So
I just brought it out of my basement and added it to my collection of goodies, which I thought was really cool. I got to find the glasses one day, but I thought that was cool. I was like, oh my God, that's so weird. One of the first times I had the figure before I actually did the role. So.
Well, and I know it's a game legacy series, but you got involved with the Persona franchise kind of early too.
Yeah, I don't think I had never played Persona, any of those. I don't know. I'm trying to remember if the name even sounded familiar when I did the first one. I think 2 was the first one I did. I think I did 2, and then I did, is it Q? Persona Q?
Yep.
And I guess the Shin Megami Tensei world is very like kind of side by side with it. So I did a number of those games, and I don't know that I realized the popularity or the significance because it hadn't entered into my world. But by the time 5 came out, I learned that people are very into that franchise. So it's been a fun ride, and I'm honored that I've been able to play as many characters as I have throughout both of those worlds. So that's been really, really cool. I'm always thankful, because you can work on something and get one character, and that's frequently happens, and that's it. You're like, right? Because you're already on this. You already did this. So it's kind of fun when I get to revisit a world and play, different characters, and Persona has been an example of that. So,
was it also the same case with were you not familiar at all with Fire Emblem?
No, I didn't know Fire Emblem at all. The more I work, the less games that I play. I've got my favorites, like Tomb Raider is my favorite game series of all time. So I play what I can. My kids are starting to get to an age where they're playing more and more video games at home. So they may bring more of them to me, but they're playing, a lot of the stuff they're playing are online games and stuff too. So they're starting to get into some console games a little bit more. I was crazy about console games, but we didn't have online games. If you go back far enough, it was all, computer and Atari and ColecoVision and television. I had all of those, systems, played all that stuff as a kid. So I grew up on consoles. That was pretty much what there was in the beginning. So it's funny. A lot of these game series that I work on, I don't necessarily have any idea, or I just know the name. Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Never played it, but yeah, I'm kind of familiar with that. let's go for it. I don't know if it helps or hurts to know about a series or to know about a game series. Because if you've played it, you might know the tone, the acting style a little better, but you've got a director there. You know what I mean? You've got a good description at your auditions, so usually you can figure it out.
And one vocally technical question.
Yeah.
I know it's more rare in anime, but have you gotten the chance to perform with yourself very much?
To perform with myself?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like play two characters talking to each other.
Oh, I was going to say, I always perform with myself. I can't perform without me. There's no way to do it. Yes. Yeah, I have. The
Glitter Force is like the main thing.
Yeah, that's the ultimate example. It happens more frequently than you'd think, but it's there was a show called Monsuno that I worked on for years. It was original animation, and there were this cast of 5. the whole cast was 5. We never had any guest actors on there or anything, so it was inevitable that we were going to act against ourselves here and there. I mean, it happened all the time. I mean, Karen Strassman played every female and every little boy in the whole series, so we all acted against ourselves multiple times. Glitter Force, also another good example of, like you mentioned, of where it's happening frequently. But even on things like Bleach or something, there are little times here and there where your characters are sitting at a table together and they both have something to say. So that happens, and it just doesn't happen as often. But yeah, Glitter Force is me yelling at myself, arguing with myself constantly, and it was a lot of fun. That was one of the more fun series I've ever worked on, and I love that series. Actually, I have just kind of a soft spot for it for whatever reason. I think everybody did a great job on it, and it's one of the few that like makes me laugh, out loud from time to time. And it's cool because it's been doing better. I remember when it first came out, there was a whole big backlash against it because they'd made so many changes in adapting the script, and it wasn't completely 100% true to the original series. I hear a little bit of that now and then, but now people have kind of grown up on it. Like I run into people at cons that are like, I love that show. That's one of my favorites, or I grew up on, I remember this, and this character's great, and I love this character and I love that. So it's nice that that's come around a bit, because I always thought it was good, and I always stuck up for it when people were like, oh, boo. And it's coming around now. People are like, yeah, that was a cool show.
Mm-hmm. And going off from that, if there's a single one you could pick, what do you think is the case where you've had to alter your voice the most significantly for something?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know how you judge what is significant altering of your voice. I mean, I know if I'm playing a character right here, I have not altered my voice that much, right? So it's a little different attitude, a little different placement of that, and slightly different speech pattern, a little nerdiness happening, And if I do something like this, I'm altering it a lot more. You know what I mean? So, but I don't know, how do you judge between that or if I'm doing something like this? I mean, what is the most, I played Orochi recently in One Piece.
Yep.
And he's got these, his voice is like really angry, and he kind of lives in this weird throaty kind of a spot. But I don't know how to judge which is the most altering. Some people might think a little bubble voice like this would be the most altering thing you could do. I just don't know. I don't know where I would judge that. So, although I can say I enjoy both sides of that. I enjoy slight alterations of the voice, and I enjoy big ones. And I think it's very important to realize, and as an actor, that sometimes it's called for to just do a completely zany, totally different placement for your voice. But if you listen to a lot of your favorite characters, like when you see a voice actor, a lot of times, like if you somebody who does a lot of Disney stuff or whatever, like someone like Jim Cummings or whatever, he's amazing. He's incredibly talented, but it's surprising how slight the alterations are between things like Pooh and Tigger sometimes. You know what I mean? They're unmistakably different, but at the same time, he's not jumping from something way down here. There's something way up. You don't have to do that to you know, have your characters have their own life and their own spark and feel unique and special. So, you know, so a slight little anything can really make that character different. And that's something I've learned as I've gone, is it doesn't have to be a huge thing. So don't try to jump that far every single time, because it's not always called for. So.
Well, in terms of most recent projects, I guess the safest thing you could talk about is Street Fighter 6.
Street Fighter 6. Yeah, that's here's a game I'm actually playing right now. I'm actually I picked it up and I was like, I gotta play this. And I did not realize how amazing it is. I have played Street Fighter before. This particular incarnation of Street Fighter seems to be above and beyond. It seems to be really good. My girls are enjoying it. I'm playing it. We have friends over and we'll throw somebody a controller and we'll battle it out. I'm still getting better at Dhalsim. I'm decent. Like I can beat the people that come over, but then when I go online to play, I get my ass handed to me. So I'm still working on. There's a lot of combos that aren't in that as intuitive. You have to kind of go online and go, hang on a second, how do I do that thing? Oh, okay, teleport then grab. Got it. Like there's certain things I'm learning to spice up my game, and when it becomes in Street Fighter, it has to be muscle memory. You have to be like, oh, you're jumping at me? Okay, boom, gotcha. Oh, you're coming, I'm a little late? Okay, gotcha. You know, you have to be really, you can't even think. You just have to get to that point where your brain just does it automatically to be really good. So I'm working on it. But really glad I got to work on that. I don't think I realized how amazing this version of Street Fighter was going to be.
Is there anything else?
Have you played it? Have you played it?
Yeah, it looks really amazing.
You've seen it. It does look good though. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Is there anything else that's upcoming that you're part of you can safely talk about? Or
oh God, probably not. if it's upcoming, I'm trying to think. The only upcoming thing I can talk about that I'm very excited about is the Miraculous film.
Okay.
Because the Miraculous movie comes out end of next month, is my understanding. I think the 28th of July, if I remember correctly, somewhere right around there. We worked really, really hard on that. And I'm just hoping there's a lot of Miraculous fans. I really hope people enjoy it. I don't want to, I'm not going to, no spoilers or anything, but the animation is brilliant. I mean, it is such, the show, the difference between the show and the film animation wise is just astounding. And it's so great to see these characters fully fleshed out. And just the animation they deserve, because it's such an incredible show and it's so popular. So I'm excited for the fans to actually get the anime. You know, you can't make every episode as good as this film. You just can't. It would take forever to get an episode done, and monetarily, it wouldn't be a smart decision. But to get a little bit of this, to be able to experience what Miraculous can be, I think the fans are going to go crazy for it. So hopefully that's the case. I'm excited.
Well, my final question then is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
What did Safe say?
What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, wow. No pressure. What do I want my legacy to be? I just hope, I would just like to be, you know, remembered as someone who loved what he did, gave his all every time, was easy to work with. I mean, we're talking about work-wise. I mean, obviously there's plenty on the, you know, on the family side and what have you, but as far as, you know, career-wise, and it would be nice to be respected within and outside of the industry for my work. I don't have a specific, you know, I've got to reach this benchmark or whatever. There's one thing I've learned from being in the industry is you have little control over where you kind of fall in. There's a lot of luck involved. Talent factors in for sure, but at the same time, there's timing and there's, you know, luck. But there's some things you can absolutely control, which is to always give 100%, to always be, you know, appreciative, kind, and polite, and patient, and all the things that you should be, and to show up on time. Like those are the things we kind of have control over. And then you hope you get into the right projects that people will remember you for. But you know, anime and video games, especially video games, it's such a new, like keeping track of the actors in it is a new thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we didn't know who the actors were in video games when they did talk. So when we had actors in it, we didn't know. We weren't like, oh, that's so and so. So it's a very new thing. So I have no idea how long the memory will last for things like this. For example, when you mentioned Zhongli or Torbjorn we were talking about, or Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter, I have no idea if in 10 years people will ever even talk about Zhongli. What about 20 years? What about 50 years? You know what I mean? There's got to be, I don't know that video games will have the same longevity as film, right? So like if you're in the Wizard of Oz will play forever. Children will watch that no matter how many generations down the road, right? And there's plenty of examples of films, classics that people, whether it's The Little Mermaid or what, that will just always play. I don't know if video games will have the same life. So who knows? But I'm very happy to leave behind, multiple performances and hopefully be remembered for some of them. I'll take that. That'd be good.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we got to do this. I've been a fan since I was, I don't know, like 8 years old, and I'm 25 now. So
that's amazing. That's incredible. See, I can't even imagine that many years ago anybody was paying attention to me. So you knew who I was when you were 8, or you just liked the characters that some certain characters I did?
Well, yeah, I think with every voice actor, I'm a big enough fan of the voice imprints on me if I hear them in certain enough shows, and then I just remember it. And then once I was old enough to like be aware of the internet, looking up things, that's how it works.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Well, good. Thank you for people like you who started to make that that let that voice print hit them and did a little bit of research and everything, because it's a new world where people are paying a lot more attention, and generally that's a good thing for the most part. And it's nice. It's nice to see my colleagues who work so hard and myself, get some recognition. That I don't think that's why we do it, but it's a real nice addition to everything else, to do what you love. And on occasion, people go like, "Hey, I really love what you do." Like, "Oh, thank you. That's awesome." So I'm very thankful for that. So I'll thank you personally. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day then.
I will. You do the same.
Okay. Bye.
It's been a pleasure. Let me know when this airs, wherever it does.
Oh, okay. Great. Thanks.
Awesome. All the best. Take care.